You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rebecca Weber, and this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. Can you believe that we're wrapping up the month of January already? And the last month was, sobering, I guess. I don't know about you, but I feel like I actually suffered from a political hangover. And I think you know what I mean. The last 30 days, it seemed like a lifetime ago. Biden was only inaugurated a week ago, but things feel so out of control right now, don't they? You are not crazy to feel that way. It's hard to imagine where we're at. It's even harder to imagine that what I like to refer to as an unholy trinity, that would be leftist media, leftist money, and political leaders, all of them hell-bent on a single party control of the White House and Congress. And these are people who have dishonored the responsibilities inherent in a free and fair media and the public trust. And I think you all have witnessed that with your own eyes. And it's caused us confusion. It's causing dissension, division, disruptions, and even injury to our republic and to the American people. But you're not crazy to feel angry and confused, because the censorship of conservative voices is real. Did I say that right? The censorship of conservative voices is real, and every American should be concerned. Now, we here at AMAC, we actually have firsthand knowledge of the way that certain content is censored, and we see how it's taking place in social media. This is the way the left is looking to impose their narrative upon the American people, and it does create fear, and you're not crazy to be fearful. The left wants to instill fear, and this is exactly what unchecked governments thrive on. Governments like communism, socialism, fascism. These are ideologies that are used to suppress speech. And it is so important that we recognize the reason why our founding fathers created our First Amendment. They knew that suppression of speech was dangerous. Now, I've been saying that threats to conservatives has been happening for a long time, and I've also been saying that these threats of fear to suppress our voice must be met with more speech, not less speech. People are angry, and we understand that anger can be a motivator, but we must control our anger. We should never engage in political violence, and I'll keep saying that over and over and over again. We don't care if you're on the left or the right. Political violence should never be tolerated. Now, when media and left-leaning Democrats call conservatives like you and me violent, which is historically not true, it prompts resentment. And when that resentment occurs, it doesn't unify our country. Okay, we understand that these unfair narratives cannot become a source for reactive violence. So AMAC is going to use this moment and this time to promote nonviolent answers. Now, last week, I joined you all with Andy Mangione and Bob Karlstrom, who work very much each and every day on Capitol Hill. They are the voice of AMAC membership. They, along with dozens of other people, we've got real feet on the street. And AMAC promises to speak and advocate for fair elections. Okay, we are not going to stop our efforts to advocate for fair elections. We're going to fight for rule of law. We're going to stand up for rule of law. I just want to keep repeating that because our law enforcement is so important in this nation. And rule of law, without rule of law, we really have no country. That is so key. So we're going to advocate for fair elections, for rule of law, for peaceful protesting, always peaceful protesting. But we do want to ensure that your voice is heard. So we are always going to work to protect our First Amendment rights, our freedom of speech. We won't be silenced. We won't be silenced by fear. We won't be silenced by anger. We will not allow our emotions to take us to such a point where violence becomes the answer. That is exactly what the left would love to see happen. They're using fear to bait you, but don't play that game with them. Now, here's what AMAC did with the 116th Congress. Now, you know that bills went dead with the incoming new administration, but we did offer our support for a bill. It was labeled H.R. 8922. It was called the Breakup Big Tech Act. That's H.R. 8922. This bill will need to be reintroduced into the 117th Congress, but essentially it removes the section 230 legal immunity armor, right? So we know that big tech, I'm talking about big tech here, and the legal protections that they are afforded. It protects Americans' First Amendment free speech rights, but among other things, legal immunity would be eliminated for social media platforms who act as publishers by using algorithms to moderate or censor content without opt-in from users. Now, this bill will need to be reintroduced, but AMAC is watching very closely. We do expect to see new legislation introduced. This was a bill that was actually introduced by Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat. So we're hopeful that other Democrats, moderate Democrats, will understand and recognize that big tech needs to be checked. AMAC will be following this story very closely. I think Google, Twitter, Facebook, I think they're going to fail due to censorship unless they really quickly change their ways. We see with the horrible things that they're doing to our country. I think it's going to be a catastrophic mistake. Both Facebook and Twitter, over $50 billion in combined market value was wiped out over the last handful of trading sessions. And this is all really since they banned Donald Trump from their platforms following that U.S. Capitol breach. But the reality is that we are being told by the media, the things that we're being told by the media are at complete odds with what we're actually seeing with our own two eyes. So when we question the false reality of what we're being told versus what we're seeing, we're being vilified as racist or bigots. You're not. Okay, when people do that to you, it's called gaslighting. You can Google that. Trust yourself. Ask questions. Question motives. Question who benefits. Those are the kinds of things you really need to ask yourself. Listen to your gut, but ask those tough questions. Ask, what is the motive around this? Who is going to benefit from this? And really think that through. Trust yourself. Because there genuinely exists a real clique of wealthy mega donors. I like to refer to them as wealthy mega donors. These are people who, liberals, and of course we know that there are conservative wealthy mega donors as well. But we need to understand that the left has very, very deep pockets. There are many progressive political activist organizations. They're even they're not even part of Washington per se. They're like outside advocacy groups. But they are very, very connected to the left's agenda. Matter of fact, Open Secrets is an actual organization that tracks political spending. And I looked up some data on the funding of liberal and progressive groups. And they report that for the 2020 election, there was a tabulation amount over $277 million from those left mega donors that contributed $1 million or more. So that's some serious money. This is money that comes from hedge funds, internet technology groups, Hollywood, for example. The anti-Trump, pro-Democrat, and leftist bias of reporting on stations like CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, they're well recognized, and it is constant, daily leftist bias reporting. And most urban-based opinion leader newspapers traditionally endorse Democrats. So it is reasonable to believe that these media organizations collaborate with Democrat leadership in support of certain chosen Democrats and very much against Republicans and the president. Just an example of this is during the 2016 Democratic contest for party nominations. We learned through WikiLeaks that the media had a preference for Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, for example. I think it was the July WikiLeaks that released nearly 20,000 Democrat National Committee emails that validated the concerns of people worried on the left that Bernie Sanders supporters, were showing up in huge numbers. So they believe that the DNC helped rig the primary election for Clinton. So we know that all of this is real, and we see the censorship of conservative voices. We believe that the elections, our elections, have not been free or fair. We read that some of the emails released on shows like CNN, stations like CNN, were approved by the DNC prior to publication. I mean, these are news stations that should not get approval to speak from the DNC. So to demonstrate the arrogance of leftist media to control our news content, listen to this. This guy, Mika Brzezinski, he's the co-host of MSNBC's Morning Joe, and I apologize if I mispronounced his name, but he said in February of 17, right? So this is 2017. We're in 2021. In 2017, he said it is the mission of the press to control exactly what people think. So again, this all goes back to the unholy trinity of the left-leaning anti-Trump mega donors, media moguls, and Democrat leadership, and their attacks on conservatives and people like you and me. And it will continue because their quest for power and control are premised on this whole fact that the end justifies the means. Americans must be vigilant. We must reject disinformation, lies, and misleading innuendo at the polls. We know that we're told information that doesn't match up. What we see and what we witness with our own eyes doesn't always match up with what we're reading and what we're hearing on the news and on the internet. So what can you do, you might ask? What can I do? Because I really hate to speak and not offer solutions. I'm very solution-driven, solution-oriented. I like to come up with ways that we can fix things and be positive. I'm a big believer in that. So what can you do, you might ask? Because I like these solutions. Well, first of all, you can join AMAC. You can join or renew your AMAC membership. And here is why membership in AMAC is vital and one of the very best things that you can do. AMAC becomes your voice in Washington. I'll say it again. AMAC becomes your voice in Washington. We have dozens of feet on the street and over 2 million Americans that stand before us and beside us, along us, shoulder to shoulder with us. We are your presence at Capitol Hill. We represent all Americans, but especially those who are 50 and older. We're centered on freedom of the individual, free speech, exercise of religion, equality of opportunity, sanctity of life, including life in the womb. And it is so disturbing to me how certain groups claim to be for social justice, but be for abortion. I read a post by Lila Rose last night who said, what is just about a mother ending the life of her own baby? I mean, what is just about that? AMAC is going to stand for things like rule of law and love of family, and we offer benefits at all levels. AMAC plays a vital role in helping build the services that enrich the lives of Americans, especially those people 50 and older. Now, some of the best advice that I ever received was from my father. My father was a wise man. He was a good man. He had a good heart. He had self-discipline. He had loads of energy. And he always took personal accountability for where he was in life. Always. He wasn't afraid to believe in himself. He looked inside himself when things got tough. He was very introspective. He believed very much in his own abilities. And I want you all to believe in your own abilities the way that my father believed in his abilities. Because Dan Weber knew that he was wonderfully made by a loving God, as we are all. But my father said to me, he said, Rebecca, I never have to worry because I always have myself to fall back on, and I can be resourceful. And he was, and he proved how resourceful he was, how resilient and committed he was when he successfully formed AMAC. And now Americans have AMAC to fall back on. So thank you, Dad. But he also said this to me. He said, when the going gets tough, and he was really referring to running a business at the time when he said this to me. He said, when the going gets tough, go back to basics. Get back to basics. He said, what did you do when you first started? Go back to what worked. Now, that was really helpful advice because sometimes we get so caught up in the confusion, in the mistrust, in the lies that we read, the stories we read, and the narrative that we are being fed, and we don't know really what to believe. But I'm going to say it again. If you are a member of AMAC, you are already making a difference because AMAC is getting back to basics, and we will always, always remind ourselves who we are, and we will never forget who we serve, you, the American people. Here is what we stand for and what we promise to fight for. So if you agree with what I'm going to read off to you here, I need for you to please share AMAC with your friends and family, with your neighbors. Please forward this podcast, share this podcast, get more people to join AMAC because we truly, truly can make a difference, and you, one individual, can make a difference. Here's what we stand for. Your First and Second Amendment rights, that is the right to keep and bear arms and your right to free speech without censorship. We stand for the flag and we kneel before God. AMAC fully supports all of those who have served and all of those currently serving the United States in the armed services. Therefore, we believe all active duty personnel and veterans deserve access to quality health care delivered in a very efficient way. AMAC is proudly pro-life. We are against abortion in principle, and we feel it is improper to allow government funding of abortions. AMAC recognizes that the national debt and our annual budget is out of control. Congress is rarely adopting a budget that is responsible. Congress has lost sight of its responsibilities. If we don't manage our fiscal and financial condition, our nation is put in serious jeopardy. By continuing to borrow, we're putting a huge burden on our children and grandchildren. Interest payments alone consume a bigger piece of the pie each and every year. So AMAC supports responsible spending, the elimination of wasteful programs, that is, and living within our means as a nation. AMAC strongly believes that there should be a requirement that the federal government establish a budget each year and be held accountable for balancing it. AMAC strongly believes that American citizens are excessively taxed. We favor reductions in individual and corporate tax rates. When corporations are taxed, they simply increase the cost of their product or service, businesses, that is. When a business is taxed, they increase the cost of their products or services. Understand that, people. Understand that that's how they do it. In order to cover the excessive tax that is placed on corporations, they'll simply pass that tax on to the buyer, to the customer, or they'll cut jobs, and as a result, prices generally increase. AMAC believes in sensible immigration reform. We don't believe in racial profiling or the harassment of legal immigrants, but we support the legal immigration process, including a requirement to learn English. AMAC does not believe in providing benefits for those who are in the United States illegally, and we support the use of E-Verify by employers. AMAC believes that our borders should and must be strictly guarded and protected. Small business is at the engine and the core of our nation's economy, and AMAC is committed to helping small businesses prosper. AMAC Action, the legislative arm of AMAC, is committed to cutting egregious taxes and abusive and intrusive regulations and for protecting free enterprise in America. If you like what we stand for, join us. If you like that there is a group that is working for you in Washington, join us. If you love America and you care about the values that make our country great, those are values of faith, family, and freedom, then please tell your friends and family about AMAC. And don't forget to take advantage of all of the money-saving benefits. Check out your AMAC member benefits at amac.us. And to all of our listeners here today, thank you. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. It's important to me that you understand what we stand for. Please share this podcast with your friends and family, and I look forward to having you back with us here next time on AMAC's podcast, Better for America.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.